excited to have a good friend of mine, Mary Grothe, with me. We go way, way back. Gosh, I can't even remember how long, but at a random little business event at church is where I met her, where we used to do business networking. And so it's been really fun to just see her throughout her journey on everything that she's been through, of the burnout that comes with being a business owner, and also just some really awesome things that you've done. So I'm really excited for you to share your entrepreneurial journey and all that you've had with that. So I think it's really cool.
Well, thank you so much. It has been a while. When you popped on, I'm like, oh, you're like the same. I think it's been like 10 years.
I know.
You look amazing. I'm
Thanks.
happy to be here with you.
Yeah. So if you want to share, just give a little bit of backstory on how you got into the business world.
Yeah. I'll give you the short version, and then I'll let you poke at it and decide where you want to dive. But when I was 22, I got into payroll sales, and this was after a very rough, traumatic upbringing. And so the corporate world, I like to say, sort of saved my life and just took me out of a very, very sinful, destructive way of living. But unfortunately, I used the success to heal my wounds from my trauma. And so I became very addicted. I was a number one sales rep. I had 5 years in payroll sales, and then I left to become a VP of sales and marketing with one of my clients. And then after that, I felt the urge to start my first business. So 28 years old, founding my first company. I had some knack, some gift, some talent as a business strategist. Entrepreneurs loved sitting and having coffee with me and asking me a bunch of questions, and they found what came out of my mouth to be valuable enough to pay for it. And so I entered into this world as a first-time founder, CEO, and built up a small little consulting firm. And I ran that for 3 years. I then went back to the payroll sales company. There's quite a story of what happened in those 3 years. You may dig. I went back to the payroll company for another 3 years in sales, and did a lot in the upmarket and larger accounts, which was helpful for me to round out my experience, and then started my second firm. So that firm, at the end of 2017, that company changed my life. I ran that for 5.5 years. I did exit in 2023. It was a pretty sloppy, frustrating exit, but I was able to exit from that business. I took a full-time chief revenue officer position with one of my clients, a payroll company. Wait, are you noticing a trend?
The trend that you like payroll.
Payroll. And then after just under 2 years, I just felt called out of corporate. And I left it all. I sold everything I own of value, including my Porsche and my golf clubs and all my jewelry and handbags and you name it. Sold it all, and I opened up a nonprofit community restaurant in Castle Rock, Colorado, and set out to feed as many people as possible a delicious, organic, gluten and seed oil-free meal for free. And thought, if we just had a big, wonderful restaurant with a great meal, and neighbors from all walks of life could come together and eat. So this is my third venture, Sunday Salmon, that I do right now. And that takes up my afternoons, evenings. And then in order to fund my nonprofit, because as it turns out, first year nonprofits are very expensive to run, and my Porsche fund didn't last as long as
so far.
It didn't go as far as I had hoped, but I've stepped into a chief revenue officer position again, this time for a company called Piedmont Global. And so it's really a beautiful relationship because I'm able to reactivate those corporate growth talents and sit in this role and do some work that I really love with a team that I've enjoyed working with, and then fund Sunday Salmon to a whole new level because of this role. And so that's who I am. That's what I do. I'm married. I have a kid and a cat.
This is awesome. I think what's really interesting is the whole thing. And I know I've been guilty of this sometimes, and I'm sure a lot of people listening in, of it's so easy to dive into work when you don't want to acknowledge other things that are going on, or using work to become an addiction and being really good at it to then help with everything else that kind of doesn't line up. So if there's a little bit, if you want to share there, of what have you learned from that, and what could you share with people that might be going through something like that, of how to balance it in a much better way than probably what you've done or what I've done in the past?
Yeah, I'm probably the worst person to answer this question, but you have me here. So let me share. Yeah. When I first started working, I'm going to give you like the few different versions of myself and how I've adapted based on the lessons that I've learned. I was single. I had no responsibility other than my small dog at home, but I could just work. I could pour my life into that job. And because it was also addicting for me, this was just a double-edged sword. So here I was all the time in the world to dedicate to a job. And then it gave me such a hit and a high to perform that I just wanted more, 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 more. So I became a workaholic very young and found that to be something that I had a lot of capacity for, a lot of energy for, and then got really great results. So who wouldn't want to continue that behavior? Unfortunately, what I did not do is, as the seasons of my life changed, I kept that hustle mentality and just the grind and perform and win at all costs mentality. I carried that into my later years. Well, the problem was, as I met my now husband, and then we had a child, and all of a sudden I'm realizing, well, wait, I'm still living this hustle and grind life, and I'm winning, and I have all the awards and accolades, and everything is so tremendous. But I haven't been present in what I really wanted, was my marriage and my son and to be a mom. And I realized that was the wake up call. And it really hit around 2020. People will remember that year.
Yes.
Something happened that year.
Yeah.
So I had been traveling almost every week. And this is when I was running my second business. So we were about 2 years in. I had crushed, every goal that I had set out for that business. We were impressing everyone. Women-owned business, didn't take on any partners or debt, and we surpassed the $1 million mark pretty early in the tenure of having the business. And less than 1% of women-owned businesses ever cross the 7-figure threshold. So there were a lot of things like that kept fueling me and saying, like, go prove to everyone that you can do a thing. And unfortunately, when COVID shut everything down, it grounded me. Literally, the planes were grounded. Like, I was grounded. Like, I was at home and I had to reacclimate. I didn't know what it was like to be at home. I didn't know what it was like to be a mom and to be, honestly, in my marriage, in that stage with my husband now being a father. I was so active in my work and I was not present at home that it was so interesting for me to have to readdress. So the pendulum swung. And when I was at home, I realized, okay, the way I was living my life is not right. My priorities out of whack. And so, like a lot of us, I think many professionals, there was something so big that shifted from 2019 to 2020. I think the way that a lot of us did work changed, like for the majority. And I don't think we've gone back. And it's just been a whole new way of living. So I think it forced upon a lot of people this view of, okay, we can have marriages and kids and we can have a professional job, but what does that actually look like? So that's when it forced me to figure it out. And it was very uncomfortable for me. I didn't know myself as a wife and a mom, being that as my predominant trait versus being a professional. And so during that time, I just had to navigate it and find the joy in a different type of title. And it was really hard, but I got there and then did a decent job of balancing it. But it was, people say it's not work-life balance, it's work-life integration. And I don't say work-life balance. Okay, I hear that. I would agree, it's got to be integration. So it picked up again when I took that chief revenue officer role after I sold my company. And I was traveling a lot and working 7 days a week. And so those old habits came back in. And I started to notice the same tendencies, and I was not feeling well, and I was not my best self. I wasn't showing up the way that I wanted to anywhere. And so that's when I realized, okay, we got to do this again. But of course, my answer that time was to just completely flee corporate America and go start a nonprofit community restaurant. But I will say this year, I've been hyper intentional. My life really changed when I launched this restaurant. It has given me peace in my heart that I was seeking for so long, and the fulfillment that I could just never find in a corporate job. And also now I spend a ton of time with my husband and son because they volunteer and work in the restaurant quite a bit as well. And I'm home a lot more. So everything finally got settled as far as where am I spending my time, which is a huge blessing. But I had to learn the hard way. Some of the lowest points for me came from that feeling of burnout and then the mom guilt. and the wife guilt. My lowest times, of which I've had many, and I detail them in my book, and I'm very open about how terrible the depression and anxiety was, and the suicidal ideation. And I, at one point, was not eating anymore. I mean, I maybe one meal a day. I was down to 120 pounds. My hair was falling out. My clothes were just not fitting. It's this world will consume you if you let it.
Mm-hmm.
Living for all the wrong reasons, but I definitely had some very low points that burnout led to, but also just the weight of the guilt. Like, I wanted to get married. I wanted to have this baby. Why am I not home?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people, and I know people even in my circle that have struggled with the same thing of they want to be a parent and they want their family to come first, but then work starts to kind of steal away that time because it's not forgiving and it really doesn't care that you want to have anything else outside of that. And I've heard from a lot of friends over the years of just getting to that place where, like you've kind of come back around of these are my priorities and how do I make work, next, it's way down the line if you look at it of order of operations, but being able to it still has to provide me income, but my family comes first.
That's hard.
Yeah. And I've heard lots of those conversations, and most recently too, just a lot of that too is things that it's weird how the world was put on pause and business changed, but then in some ways it's like going back to what it was. It's like I'm traveling a lot more than what I was again all of a sudden, and it had been, hey, we'll just do Zoom calls, and that's a lot easier for people that are doing a lot of other things. It's easier to be at home and you're just hopping on a call versus, all right, let me hop on a plane Tuesday. I'll be home Thursday. I got to leave again Sunday. And it just becomes chaotic, and that burnout comes in. And I experienced decent amount of burnout last year where I took 3 months off and kept the lights on. But it's being able to get to that point of, hey, I needed to rest and figure out and not let work decide what's the best for me.
Yeah. I mean, right now I work a full-time job. The restaurant is also just about full-time.
Mm-hmm.
And I homeschool 2 days a week. And those are the curriculum that I'm involved with just in the mornings, but 2 days a week. And somewhere in there, I have time for God and time for my husband. And it's really only through God's grace in this season that I have the capacity to do this. And I do feel that this season will come to an end soon as far as the 7-day a week, because right now it's 7 days a week, 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. But there's so much joy in it. And my family is so integrated into the nonprofit work that we're spending more time together now than I ever have in the past. So there are some really good points in this season, but I can already feel it on my heart that I don't take a Sabbath day. I do not have a day off ever. And that needs to change. And so like a day off for me, usually 4 or 5 hours into it, I'm so antsy. I'm like, I have to be doing something.
Right.
So that's hard for me to do. And I have a feeling like I'll have to baby step into it. And I think that's exactly what I'm going to start with. I'm going to start like implementing a 6-hour window one day a week where I don't work. 6 hours. Let's see if I can do it.
Like can you get to that point?
But I have a feeling that during that time, I'll be able to just really like heal myself for that week and give myself the rest that's needed in order to stay strong for everything else. But it's very interesting right now, just everything on the plate. But I love it all. So there you go.
There you go. Yeah. No, I think that's awesome. And I think one thing that I've seen over the years too is just how much more your faith has taken, a forefront in all that you do. And I think it's been really fun to see like the podcast you came out and just telling those stories. What do you think was kind of the pivotal moment into turning back to that and kind of putting God first in all the ways that you go?
Well, if we're going to have that conversation,
we want to go down that route.
Okay. All right. Let's tell everybody the truth here. I did not come to know Christ until I was 29. And I found him 7 months after a night of drinking when I drove my car into my neighbor's front porch. I battled alcoholism and other terrible things for years. all a product of my raising and the environment that I had to figure out how to survive as a child. With that, coming to the Lord at 29, I was so owned by this world that my identity took a very long time to shift because I was afraid of what people thought about me, and I was afraid of losing so many things if I were to share my faith with my outside voice, not just the inside voice. Well, that showed up in my life. I mean, I made a conscious decision to be a Christian where it was safe, and to be a professional where it was deemed, not safe for work, right? On the faith side, the other not safe for work. So unfortunately, when you're not, as a woman of faith, as a person of faith, when you do not invite your faith in through your workday, guess what happens? You handle everything with your flesh, your conflict, your disagreements, your anxiety, your fears, all of the things of our flesh in the world. If we have not brought our faith into the workplace, all of a sudden creep in, and then we wonder why work is hard. We wonder why our relationships are poor. We wonder why we're sitting at the dining room table, trying to have dinner with our family, and we're so distracted and blah, 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 blah. Well, where's your priority? And so really, I don't remember the exact moment, but I do remember when I was running House of Revenue, the company that I sold. It was Sales BQ and then House of Revenue. And I remember how I started to be more affirmed in my faith. It was probably around 2020, probably with the reset of everything. I was really growing. And I tried to launch a podcast at that time with my friend Anna. And I was an absolute closet Christian. And I launched an episode on LinkedIn, and it was a house divided. And I received the two sides of the coin, praise or persecution. And half of them were like, way to go, you're so bold in your faith. And then the other half was like, unfollow, cancel, don't want to do business with you. And receiving that was so interesting, and I didn't quite know how to navigate it. And so for a couple of more years, I really kept that faith inside. But I started to drip it out in a few different places. But again, I was just playing where it was safe, and I wasn't boldly walking around, proclaiming my faith and making that the center of everything of who I am. And I just started to realize, okay, the pains, problems, and challenges I'm incurring in my life are very evident to where I invite the Lord, the Holy Spirit, through the different conversations, and where I don't. And so I made a commitment, I think it was 2022, that I started to speak more firm and boldly about my faith. And then when I started blogging again, I think it was 2022. So my book came out in September of 2022. So Forbes published my memoir, and I was very outspoken with my faith in that. And I started to get a little bit more comfortable. I also joined a speakers bureau where I could share my faith and whatnot. So it slowly became easier. But then in the beginning of 2023, if I can get my years right, this is always so hard for me. I can't remember what year anything was. I don't know. It was 23 or 24. I decided to hang up my hat on all the revenue keynotes that I was doing and go all in. This has been 24, and go all in on revamping my keynotes to be my testimony and other things where I see this conflict with Christians in the workplace. So I set on this journey to revamp it all, and I had this really great keynote. But in order to prep for those keynotes and to be able to speak on stage and actually quote scripture, I realized that I needed to get to know the word. And so in 2024, I read the Bible, I listened to it cover to cover twice. And by doing that, I was able to absorb the word in a way that I had never had in my entire walk. And while I was listening to it, I realized, okay, wait, I don't know what year this was, but I realized the Bible so clearly tells me every answer to every question I've ever had. But I did not prioritize reading the word. So here I am, this very worldly woman, very successful, the resume, everything, all the accolades. And then there's this other side of me that I had kept very private. And so I decided that it was time to morph those two worlds, and I couldn't be two people anymore. And then that's where I just became that unapologetic and launched the Fearless Faith radio show. We were actually on a Denver radio station but then I ended up pulling it in-house and built a podcast studio upstairs. I've since shut that down. One thing had to go. One thing had to go But really at this point, I am able to navigate my days and live the way that I do because of my faith. And for years, I had separated it out, and I wondered why some days were so hard. I have gone through some very challenging situations this year, but they have all been met with such grace and ease and peace. I've had a couple of instances in the nonprofit restaurant world that really turned everything upside down. And my heartbeat didn't even pick up. I was cool, calm, and collected, all the faith in the world that God was working in it and he knew exactly what he was doing. This is the first year ever that I didn't have a consistent income source. And since I was 15 years old, I've been working and supporting myself. And when I jumped off the cliff to open the restaurant, I didn't have any income. I told you I sold what I had, and then I got to start working. And that was the first time I really admitted the Lord was my provider, because Mary Grothe was my provider before that. That was the belief system that I had. So now, like when I became fully dependent on him, and then to enable him to work in my life in a way that all of his promises were delivered on, every prayer was answered. I saw him in ways I never knew he could be. And by him demonstrating that for me, that was then a for sure statement and declaration of my faith, because he is who he is and he has shown it to me and proven it to me over and over and over and over again. I'm willing to lose anything and everything in order to see him boldly in my faith. And it took me this whole journey to get to that point. And so I am who I am.
Yep.
I'm a child of God, and that's it. And I do not wince with my truth and how I speak, and truly and how I love people, which is an opportunity. The way that God loves us, it's my opportunity as a human being to love them and to extend mercy and grace and forgiveness and patience and all the good things that come through the fruit of the Spirit. So I finally took that turn, and I'm so glad that I did, because life just isn't hard anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, you see it through a whole new set of lens. And I think what's really been fun too is kind of just seeing that journey, the highlights that you would post on LinkedIn of, hey guys, I'm doing this. And it's
Mhm.
just been really cool to watch like who you were and where you are now, and all these, new ways that you're using the skill sets that you have to be able to do things for others. And I think that's what's really cool to see with your nonprofit, with the restaurant, and how you saw, hey, there's such a need because people don't do community well
No,
anymore.
no.
And you're like, hey, I know a way to kind of help do this, and seeing, hey, let's all get together for dinner, and you put your place time, what time do you want to come, and you sit at a table, you meet some new friends, and just a good way for people to volunteer as well.
It is. It's so beautiful to bring neighbors from all walks of life together. And there's like zero discrimination. Everyone is welcome. People ask all the time, is Sunday Salmon a faith-based organization? No, but people have heard me say, no, but I am. So, there's going to be that. It's coming from that place.
Mhm.
But we've had a lot of concerns from people that are like, I don't know if I'll be welcomed there. And I've seen a couple of comments on Facebook. Thankfully, enough people have dined there that I don't have to respond anymore,
Yeah.
because our neighbors do. And they jump on and they're like, Mary loves everybody who walks through the door. We have seen people, when we say all walks of life, we mean all walks of life.
Mhm.
And we have these big 12-seater community tables. And so I have, a couple of singles, I have a couple of groups of 2, 3, 4, 5, and we just seat them all together at these tables. And we have people breaking bread. And I said it the other night, and I'm curious to see how long it goes for. I have never seen a guest at Sunday Salmon on their phone
That's awesome.
when they're sitting and eating.
Yeah.
I've never once seen it. And that was something that was like an aha for me. I'm like, oh my gosh, these people are actually breaking bread and dining together and having conversation. Now, the table is served family style, so they also have to pass the
Mhm.
plates and bowls, and they're talking to each other. And it's just so beautiful to see this organic human-made conversation come up. And I think that the community part of it is huge. I mean, my heart when I started Sunday Salmon was to extend the table.
Mhm.
One thing, as busy as I have been as a professional, Sunday night family dinner was an absolute staple. And that was something that we were all committed to. And it was very special for us. And I'm a little bougie with my food. So everything is organic, gluten-free, seed oil-free, like super healthy. And I was a gluten-free vegan for years, combating some digestive issues that I had. And so this was, I know when you're have food allergies, how hard it is to go out and eat. And when you think about people who are in need, so there's 3,000 neighbors in Castle Rock, Colorado that are at or below the poverty line. And what they have access to, if one of them is celiac,
Yeah, it's really hard to find anything. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and so it's just hard. And so for us, it's like we are a very allergen friendly restaurant. Everything is no cost. It's not a pay what you can. Pay what you can. So like, here's the bill, just pay what you
Mhm.
can. There's no bills. We don't drop anything. There's no charge. It's just you come and you eat, you leave. And there's a little cash donation jar up at the front. If you want to drop in a couple of bucks, great, but you don't have to. But it's just so beautiful to see just this need being met in our community, but also because we have such a premium product, like with our organic, gluten-free, seed oil-free, like super healthy meals. We have 2 professional chefs that work for us. So the food is excellent. We attract a lot of neighbors who are not the ones who need to sit for a free meal, but there are diners who donate. Also, you think about they're in a good way of life. They might be sitting next to someone who's in a hard way of life.
Mhm.
When they connect and that relationship starts to form, I think it's like so organic on its own, what can come from that.
Yeah.
And so it's so beautiful to see these people be connected across those socioeconomic gaps as well. So yeah, community, we bring the community. Oh my goodness. I like hug every single person that comes in. That's probably why my immune system is so good.
Yeah.
It's so incredible to see them every time we have dinner service. I just love them all so much. It is an extension of my table for sure. And it has turned into quite the event.
That's fun. Yeah, I remember seeing when you were coming out with the logo design and all of that in the
Brilliant.
beginning, and just, yeah, kind of how it's grown over time. I think one thing to ask a couple of questions, just one would be, what advice would you give to business owners that are feeling burned out?
Yeah. Take a break. You have to figure it out. Like you just have to stop. Well, someone wise once told me, don't make decisions when you're below the line. So we all have a line of where like we're good, and everything above this is we're great, and then everything below this is I'm not okay. And so many of us operate below the line, and that's where burnout happens. Burnout happens below the line, and the biggest thing is when you're feeling those moments of burnout. I learned whether it's I just need to go to bed at 7 p.m. and just shut myself in the bedroom and have quiet time and just be in there and breathe and to let everything go that I'm feeling and then just get some rest. So number one is like get back up to the line because you don't want to make decisions when you're below the line. And then I do what I can because I have reached burnout several times, like catastrophic burnout, the kind that completely knocks me
Yeah.
out and is very ugly and usually involves yelling and tears and right. Okay. Take a break, breathe, shut off everything that you can and get to a place where you're at the line. And then from there is the opportunity to evaluate what's going on. I like to make a list in Excel and where am I spending my time right now? I also color code my calendar. So now I sort of have a cheat sheet that I can look at because I can rank and sort by the different categories of what I'm doing. Because I'm like, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't get
Right.
so this thing has me booked out every day. I start booking out my time from 5 a.m. all the way until 9 p.m. every day. And it's all color coded. So that is a visual representation. Plus it tallies the time on the side that it can tell me what I'm doing. So my recommendation is identify where your time is going. And then you have to start making decisions. Do you keep doing it? Do you stop doing it? Or do you delegate it? And once you go through the list, go through it again. Because the first time we're usually a little emotional. I can't. It's not possible.
Yeah.
Go through again, see what your first pass gets you. Where does it free you up? And then just sit down and have the priority conversation. Like, where do you feel out of alignment? Usually burnout for me was a combination of feelings in addition to being exhausted and doing too much. And our heart and our feelings can be deceitful and can lie to us. So I needed to remove the emotion and the stories I was telling myself and actually just go down to factual what the situation was. And so getting to that as well was really helpful in the exercise. But all of that, I just feel like when I would get to these points of burnout, so much of it was just something happening inside of me and I was unwell. So how do you get well? After that,
Mhm.
rest is a huge component. Identifying where you're spending your time, what you need to keep, what you can stop, what you can delegate, and then really understanding the priority in this season. Because it is okay for this season to look very different from last season, and it can change again. In this season, what is my priority? Where do I need to be? And then taking all of that and then going through and sorting through the lies and the emotions and every story that we've told ourselves, get to the sheer fact. What is it? What is it not? And then build a plan moving forward. So oftentimes when I have the feelings of burnout start to kick up, I thankfully can like feel it now.
Mhm.
I plan a day off. So sometimes my schedule is so busy. Well, my day off is, what do we say, like a half
Right. It's maybe you can get to 6 hours of a day
full
off.
day.
Maybe it's an hour.
Full day. Yeah, I plan an hour off is what I do. I laugh, but it's like kind of honestly as simple as it can be. But I do find that chunk of time, and sometimes I'm so booked out, maybe a week or two, that I do book that time a week or two out. Like if that's literally the first time I can get to it, but you have to start like noticing those feelings inside. And then I come up with what are my decision points that I need to make when I have this window that I'm carving out for myself to just chill out.
Yeah.
And then what is it going to look like moving forward? But it's hard, Christy. It's hard. If you have type A, high urgency people, I mean, we are like the worst offenders in this category. But then you couple that with somebody who's blessed with some really wonderful talents, like especially that are viewed as highly valuable in the corporate world and can be highly compensated for them too. It's really, really difficult
Mhm.
to have the off button. But those are some of the things that I've done to
Yeah.
sort it
No,
out.
that's good because I've had to do certain things like that of just the reprioritization of time too is just a big thing of letting my calendar rule my life instead of me being in charge of the calendar. That's always been, issues here and there. And then that leads to the burnout because it's like, well, I have a half-hour break that I was going to eat lunch, but oh, sure, let me get this meeting because these people need me. And, putting myself way down the line instead of, hey, you probably should take care of yourself a little bit too, so that everybody else, I can help them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'm also just like on that note, everybody needing me. I have really turned a corner in that. And I've made a short list of who actually needs me.
Hmm.
And I have done something that I'm really proud of, especially in the last couple of months when I started to take on this work with Piedmont Global, is my son and my husband must always get undivided, no questions asked. If they need me, they get me.
Hmm.
And that has been transformative in the relationship with my son because I realized how many times per day I'm on my laptop, I'm on my phone, I'm doing something, and he's, hey, mommy, you know this. And I'm like, hey, I can't look right now, I'm working.
Yeah.
And I started to add up how many times I said that throughout a day. I'm like, this is embarrassing. I will never get this time back with my son.
Hmm.
And if I want to have an influence on the young man that he turns out to be, I better stop what I'm doing and pay attention to him.
Right.
And so I just created this recently where it's like, okay, Mary, you're taking on a lot in this season. And if I let it consume me, it will consume me and it will take every minute because I could easily justify and say, they all need me.
Hmm.
They don't. They're
Right.
going to be just fine.
Hmm.
But my son and my husband, that has become a non negotiable. And that has just made a significant impact. You know what it's also taught me?
What?
How easy it was to do that and how, like, not fire burning, death ensuing
Hmm.
perception I had of all of the things that were vying for my time. Like everybody lived,
Yep. Everybody
and
did just fine. Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, what else can I like, bring this thought into? Like, how else can I change?
Hmm.
Because there's so much joy and just like this peace inside of me. And then I don't have that mom guilt or the wife guilt. I'm like, hey, I'm actually doing a thing. I'm working a lot. However, I also have this great relationship with my family right now.
That's so cool. Yeah, I love that for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think one last question before we go is if there is anybody that's kind of, they're in that, hey, I work 9 to 5, but then what do I do? I'm kind of looking at the entrepreneurial journey, but then is it the right for me, because they can, it's like the burnout can happen. And sometimes people are very cognitive of, I know I'm very prone to doing burnout. What would you say if somebody's making that shift from going from, regular 9 to 5 to just going to start their own business? What are things that they should, be aware of or put into place today to help them not? And I know some of it is kind of like what you said with the line and all of that, but
Mhm.
is there anything else that you would say for somebody kind of taking that leap?
So I'm going to maybe give an unpopular answer because this is how I've done it. And so maybe this resonates with someone and maybe someone else is like, you're nuts. This is terrible advice. I honestly can't answer that question until I start doing the work. I mean, this
Yeah.
is the third company that actually got off the ground that I have founded. I have a couple of other smaller ventures that didn't go anywhere. There were just a few months of trying to figure things out and I just couldn't get the traction that I needed and couldn't build a P&L that made sense. Like, is this worth my time? And so there are a couple of things that I've started that were quietly just shut down. They never really, one, I guess, made it to market with an announcement, but it got closed down months after launch. But the answer I have to that, if someone is going from that 9 to 5 to entrepreneurial world, give yourself space, choose a season when you can really go all in and figure it out. Like, I would give yourself 3 months, give yourself permission, talk to the people around you and just set those boundaries, but also just a disclaimer, like, I'm going to give this everything I have for 3 months to establish a baseline for what this could be. And so I think like the first 90 days of every venture that I have started have been me diving in head first. Like, I just want to go. I want to set up all my infrastructure. I want to do all of my, just the initial building and get it out to market and launch it. I want to get a few clients. I want to start servicing and I just want to see what the numbers are. Opinions are valuable, but data is priceless.
Yes.
We can have an opinion, which is valuable, about how we think it's going to go. But until we get in there, we don't have the data. We don't really know. And so my advice, which might be a little bit different than what you were expecting, is that you go all in for 90 days and you set your boundaries before you do it. So you carve out those working hours, you give yourself permission in certain areas, you figure out what works and you say, this is what I'm going to give, and then accumulate as much data as possible. And then I think after that first 3-month mark, after the first 90 days, you have enough at that point to say, like, is this a viable business that I want to continue to invest more time in? What are the key pivots that I need to make in order for it to be viable? Or if it is viable, like, now what do I need to do? What is my next phase plan in order to take this to the next level? But I think in each of those stages, being conscious on the front end of saying, like, I am willing to dedicate, like, if you're doing something part-time, 25 hours a week, pick the days and the times, block it out in your calendar, be disciplined. And I think that if you go in with the end in mind, with that structure of like, by this date, I want to achieve this. By this date, I'd like to achieve this. And here's what I'm willing to allocate. Well, you may launch that experiment and come back and say, well, I allocated 25 hours a week. This is the goal I wanted, but I hit here. So I need to readjust. I either need to go up to 40 hours a week if I want to hit this mark, or I just really need to evaluate this altogether.
Mm-hmm.
If I only have 25 hours, potentially this isn't the right model. So I need to pivot or I'm going to try something different. But for me, I just have to go all in. I can't like spread my, dabble in something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got
You're similar. It's like, I need to know all the working parts, how everything works, every piece unturned, and then from there make a decision.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's awesome. Well, one last thing, if you could share just where people can find information about Sunday Salmon if they're in the area to stop by.
Yeah, please. Oh my gosh, come. SundaySalmon.com. Again, it's a no-cost community restaurant. Neighbors from all walks of life are welcome. And we have dinners every Sunday at 5 and 6 p.m. We do one Thursday a month. It's a Thankful Thursday, Thanksgiving-inspired meal. And we also have our Tuesday tacos. Like, we have a mobile food trailer, so we've been doing a lot of our taco events mobile. This is the first one we have coming up tomorrow, October 28th. In restaurant, which is like, oh my gosh, so much fun to have our in-house Tuesday tacos. But SundaySalmon.com has all the info. If people want to grab a reservation, I recommend reserving a seat. We do take about 10 walk-ins per seating, but reservation guarantees your spot. And then we also have volunteer opportunities on the site, and then ways to give. If people are interested in buying their neighbor a meal, we sure would appreciate that.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
It has been fun.
Yes.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah. And then everybody, if there's any other questions you have, feel free to keep putting them in. We'll look at them all throughout the week and get you responses. But thanks again, Mary. I really appreciate your time.